Happy Halloween from Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following week. My name is Colton Brown, and joining me is Andrew Meadows.
Ooh, spooky Halloween.
Ooh. It's pretty good. Unfortunately, I just realized that that greeting is only going to be good for exactly one day when this episode goes up on our Patreon feed. So for those of you that are listening in November and perhaps sometime down the road,
Happy belated Halloween.
I mean, it's it's in the Halloween spirit. So happy belated Halloween. Maybe you're listening to this in Halloween 2019. Who's to say?
That's it,
right? So it'll be appropriate. I mean, it's Halloween somewhere, something like that. It's like 5 o'clock somewhere. It's kind of the same principle. That's how it works, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, if you change the calendar on whatever device you're using, you could make it Halloween.
That's true. Yeah. Always Halloween in heart.
Yeah. So bonus episode number 8. Welcome. We've got some good things in store for listeners on this episode here.
I really look forward to these bonus episodes, man. They're short, or they're not really short. Sometimes they're very long. Most of the time, they're actually longer.
I think they're definitely the longest episodes we've produced. At least those first few, the Marvel ones we did.
But these are where one of us might watch a movie we're less passionate about, or what have you. These bonus episodes, they come in, and they're always something we're really excited to do, because, I mean, we put it together and we're really excited about covering it, you know?
Well, we literally pick what we want to talk about. I mean, we do that to a certain extent with the regular episodes, but those are limited to, hey, this is coming out this week, so it makes sense to talk about it now. This is like, hey, we have literally the entire back catalog of every film, every television show ever made. What do we want to talk about? So, I mean, we have free reign to kind of pretty much pick and choose. You know, we've most consistently done, I think, franchises overall, but we took a little bit of a different approach this time around. We'll get into it in just a second. But yeah, I think that it's nice to have that sort of freedom to just kind of go in any direction you choose. And of course, you know, with this one, with the Halloween season upon us, you know, we decided to go into a horror influenced direction, which I feel like is a genre we haven't talked about too much. I mean, we did it extremely recently with the recent release of Halloween parentheses 2018.
That's
but,
right. I think earlier this year we also covered Hereditary, which is we
did Hereditary. Movie. We did A Quiet Place as well. So we've definitely done them here and there. I'm not saying that, but
it's definitely a genre that I think calls to us. I think we both really enjoyed the horror genre.
Oh, absolutely. I just think that it's a difficult genre to really craft a movie around, I think, especially in this day and age. And so I think that a lot of times there's a hesitation, because a lot of movies, I think, that get put out, a lot of horror movies, that is, a lot of them kind of fall into the PG-13 kind of schlocky, kind of not really the kind of horror I think that really appeals to us. I think Hereditary is definitely not something like that. I think A Quiet Place, again, was something not like that. So I think the horror movies that we have covered are kind of those movies that maybe seem to kind of elevate the genre above kind of the usual fare that you get, I think, in this day and age.
And I think that the movies that we're covering this episode elevate the genre. I think these aren't just your basic jump scare released every year kind of movies.
Right.
Yeah.
So on that note, let me go ahead and talk a little bit about what it is we're covering on this episode. Now, granted, you could look at the title and figure out that there's 4 movies that we're talking about, but we kind of, again, we took a different approach to what we wanted to talk about this episode, and actually kind of went through a few different iterations until it became this final iteration, you know, that we sat down and watched these 4 movies for. We wanted to talk about movies that neither Andrew or myself had ever seen. So all 4 of these movies that we're talking about tonight are all movies that we had never previously seen. Some we had familiarity with, just generally speaking, at least in my case, and then some I had really no familiarity with at all. So
I had no familiarity with any of these movies, I guess, except the first one we're going to talk about, only because you told me it was a re-release whenever we talked about the trailer.
Correct.
But aside from that, I had nothing. I had no idea about these movies.
Right. Okay. Well, and I feel like that kind of, again, helps make this episode a little bit different than kind of what we've done. with a lot of franchises that, it's usually just rewatching something, usually rewatching stuff that we like and we want to talk about because we enjoy talking about it. But, this is maybe more akin to our regular episodes in the sense that, hey, it's a brand new movie. Of course, we've never seen it. So here's our novel reaction to this. And the difference here is some of these movies are 40 years old,
Yeah, so, the oldest one I think is 1977, right?
Right. So, the newest one is about a year old. So, it kind of spans a few different decades. And then that was kind of a secondary goal, was that we wanted to talk about horror movies that kind of spanned some generations maybe. So I think we deliberately kind of decided, let's do 2 pre-2000 movies and then 2 post-2000 movies. And as it turned out, we managed to do that. The ones that we got were much more recent within a past couple of years. The 2 that are post-2000 are definitely more on the recent side. And as it turned out, when we were kind of just picking, some movies that we wanted to talk about, we actually ended up with, I think, maybe a more interesting concept to kind of look at it from.
Right. I think this is my favorite concept, actually.
So, and that's basically, we have 4 different horror movies, 4 very different movies, and 4 movies that hail from 4 different countries. So each of these movies was made in a different country by, filmmakers that work within that country that can, and I think that each movie you can kind of see the stylings and sensibilities
Absolutely.
of each country, and I think that makes an interesting comparison, especially kind of watching these movies, I don't think I've seen a movie in between watching these 4 movies, so it's interesting to go one to the other and kind of see where are things similar, where are things different, and again, sometimes it's just, this was made so long ago that, yeah, of course the sensibilities are different now, but I think a lot of it you can still kind of look at it from the lens of, this is just maybe a foreign perspective compared to our American perspective of making things and viewing things. So I think it's going to make for a really interesting episode to talk about these movies. So let's talk about what these movies are real quick, because I think we've danced around that for a few minutes now. Again, if you saw the title, you could probably piece it together. It's a really big
fucking surprise, guys. Real big surprise.
But we're talking about Suspiria, the 1977 original Suspiria. The remake is, I think, just now expanding into wide release, or at least wider release. We're talking Audition from 1999. We're talking The Wailing from 2016. And we're talking It Comes at Night, released last year, 2017. So again, 4 movies, 4 different countries, 4 different years that they came out. So there's a lot of kind of context, I think, behind these movies. And I'm excited to talk about it. So before we get into Suspiria, I meant to talk about this a little earlier. This is a bonus episode, so it's a timed exclusive for our supporters on Patreon. So for those of you who are supporters on Patreon and you're listening to this episode that way, we thank you for your support. If you're not a supporter on Patreon, it's very easy to get set up with our Patreon. All you need to do is go to watchreviewrepeat.com. That's our website. Go to the premium tab, click the Become a Patron button, and that'll get you right to where you need to do. It's $2 a month, and you will get all of these bonus episodes alongside our Patreon subscribers, our current subscribers. You'll get early access to it, and in addition, you'll get early access to all of our regular episodes. So that is a good plan, especially if you wanted to listen to this on Halloween itself. That's the only way to do it, to listen to this episode on Halloween 2018, is literally to be a supporter on Patreon. So that's, if you want to be
timely. It's a really
timely.
special thing, man. It's a very special thing.
So, without further ado, let's jump into these movies, man. So, Suspiria. We're going to start with Suspiria. We're going to go in chronological order with all these movies. So, Suspiria, hailing from the country of Italy, was released in February of 1977. It is written by Dario Argento and Daria Nicolidi. It is also directed by Dario Argento. It stars Jessica Harper, Stefania Cassini, Flavio Bucci, Miguel Bosé, Alida Valli, Udo Kier, and Joan Bennett. And in this movie, After a series of brutal murders, an American newcomer to a prestigious German ballet academy comes to realize that the school is a front for something sinister.
Ooh.
So, in kind of the spirit of keeping this maybe more in line with how we kind of take our approach to our regular episodes, I actually wanted to keep a very small non-spoiler section for each of these movies.
Okay.
Just so we can have kind of our general reactions to it, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into things with spoilers, because I don't know how many of our listeners will have seen some of these movies, and I think that it might be kind of nice to have some horror recommendations or lack thereof, perhaps, if we didn't like any of these movies. It's possible. I'm not gonna go there just yet.
I can't go there yet.
But I think that it'd be nice for our listeners to kind of think, okay, maybe this is a movie worth going in on, and they can get that information without having the entire movie spoiled for them, which, especially some of these more recent movies, when we get to those, maybe that'll be a little bit more prescient, so.
Right.
So with that in mind, non-spoiler wise, and again, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time here, because there's going to be plenty to talk about with all these movies as far as the spoilers are concerned. What did you think about Suspiria, 1977?
I liked it a lot. I don't want to tilt my hand yet, because I think we're probably going to talk about this later on, but I did. I really enjoyed this one. I can't believe that first of all, I can't believe I've never heard of it. Second, I can't believe I've never seen it. It's incredibly striking. The colors, the score. I thought it was an outstanding movie. What'd you think? I mean, that's just a brief little snippet, but I mean, I was blown away. I thought it was awesome.
I myself was equally blown away by this movie.
I think you have to take the recommendations with a grain of salt, because you're listening to two people that just, I really like the genre. And then from like a filmmaking standpoint, there's a lot of interesting things that are done in this movie that you don't see in a lot of movies, even still to today, and so it's definitely, I would say that this movie's definitely not for everybody. It's definitely aged. I think it's aged kind of rough, especially with like effects and everything else. And I don't think it didn't scare me at all. I didn't think it was horrifying or anything else. But just from a filmmaking standpoint, and the way it was edited, and the way that they did the colors, and the way that they the score was in the movie, I thought it was very well made, especially for the time.
Yeah, no, I think I mostly agree with kind of everything you've said. I myself was definitely blown away by this. I did have familiarity with this movie existing, but it was something that I had, also had never seen. So I really didn't know kind of the full detail of kind of what the movie was about, other than it's kind of just this weird horror movie that people seem to like a lot, and it's kind of considered a horror classic.
And that's another thing too, as you get into it. I don't mean to cut you off, but the I feel like the content, and I think in telling of the content is kind of a spoiler in and of itself, because you really don't know what the hell's going on the entire movie until the very end.
Sure, yeah.
So I don't want to get into it, but I feel like the content of the movie is something that's not really hit on. I can think of one movie that kind of hits on the same kind of content recently, and it was a really well made movie too. But there's tropes, and there's not themes. I guess maybe themes is the right thing, but I can't think of the appropriate word, but there's sometimes you have slasher movies, right? Sometimes you have movies that deal with spirits or paranormal activity, or there's just a number of things that you can have in a horror movie, right? And I think that the one that this is about, I don't think that there's a lot of those, and I think that kind of makes it special.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I know what movie you're talking about, and naming it would definitely be a big old spoiler. So
right.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's kind of what intrigued me, I think, a lot about this movie is I didn't quite know the nature of it other than, again, hey, it's this horror classic that people, rave about. I actually had no idea what it was actually about. And I didn't, basically, throughout most of the movie until it was revealed at the end. So I was kind of just like, oh, which I thought was a really, it was a good moment. It was a very satisfying moment, and in a way that, it kind of leans into that thought of, oh, you don't really see that a whole lot. Okay, that's cool.
It's a really cool perspective piece, right? Like, the movie's about Susie, and she doesn't know what the fuck's going on, And either does the audience, and you find out with her, and it's a really good character piece, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I did, I wanted to make a couple notes, and then we can kind of stop dancing around it and get into spoilers. But
right.
Apparently, one styling of Italian films of this era is that dubbing was very pervasive. I assumed you watched the English language version of this film.
Yeah, that was kind of shit. I didn't.
So, well, I'll tell you this: the Italian language version of this film is also dubbed because I guess just the way that this was filmed, Argento basically had every actor speak in their native tongue. So American actors spoke English, and then Italian actresses spoke Italian, and I think there's maybe a couple German actors or actresses in this, and then they basically everyone just spoke exactly what their native tongue was within filming the movie itself, and so there was never a version of this movie where it was not going to be overdubbed. So I think that's just kind of a weird stylistic thing, which you don't see anymore. Things being filmed that way, everyone speaks the same language, or it's just subtitled or something like that. So it was an interesting choice. I actually thought for the most part it wasn't that distracting.
It's very distracting in the beginning, though, until you get used to it. I think you get used to it.
It's all right, I think, because for probably the first 15, 20 minutes, I think everyone speaking actually is just speaking English. So the dub relatively closely matches. I think once you get a little bit more into the school and there's more interactions, then it starts becoming a very kind of like, okay, the hell's going on here? But I wanted to point that out. So I didn't know if you knew that or not. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently
I just thought I was watching a shit copy of the movie, to be honest with you, and I just dealt with it.
Yep. Let's say that's apparently just a thing. So,
no, okay, all right. Well,
I say that's one trapping of this
just doesn't
movie
age
being
very
made.
well. Yeah.
No, yeah. So you don't see things made this way, and probably a good idea to leave that whole thing behind. But it was probably also a limitation at the time.
I thought that portion, I think the vocal, like the dialogue, I thought was mixed, kind of strange. It sounded strange. But when you watch
in a weird sort of way, it actually kind of it kind of, because the whole movie's kind of weird, kind of trippy a little bit. Like it almost kind of, I don't want to say that it adds to it, because I do think it's kind of distracting at times, but it does kind of add in a way to
the
how things are just
character.
It's just a little off kilter, you know.
I guess.
So if you wanted to look at it through that perspective, then maybe you can kind of
definitely comment on about the fucking score, though. That was not mixed strange. That shit was crazy. And oddly enough, the content of the entire movie was said throughout the entire movie. In the very beginning, if you listen to the music and stuff, it's being said the entire time.
Okay. And
do you know what I'm talking about?
Kind of, yeah.
And you don't think about it. I didn't think about it. I just thought it was some fucked up noises and stuff. But
okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. No. Okay. I see what you're getting at. Yeah. So apparently, it was a progressive rock and Italian band named Goblin that did the score for this.
Well, they're fucking cool, and I like it.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's on Spotify, by the way. So,
is it?
Yeah.
I have to look that shit up.
So yeah, and then again, just last note that I had, cinematography, the heavy use of kind of the deep reds and stuff like that was just really fucking incredible. Just really, really striking imagery throughout the entire film.
I think I texted you that. I think at some point.
I don't recall, but it's possible.
Yeah, I was. I think that's what really sets the movie apart. And a lot. I think that's probably the most. That's the biggest thing I walked away from. is just, it's like they totally they shift colors. It's got a heavy use of colors, and I don't know if Italy, or I guess they go to Berlin. It's in Berlin, isn't it, or is it in Italy?
The movie itself is set in, I think, Munich, Germany.
Is it set? Okay, so I don't know if in the 70s, late 70s, if they were using that kind of fucking wallpaper everywhere. God damn, it kind of makes me want to put wallpaper all over my house. That shit was crazy, dude. Especially that scene in the beginning where the like a hotel or the apartment or whatever it is. Yeah, well, like the elevator uses like a triangle to show what floor it's on, and then like there's like symmetrical like shapes and stuff all on the wallpaper. It's crazy. It's so fucking crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if the stylistic trappings of that era were quite as
set in like an art housey thing for the 70s.
Yeah, I don't think they were quite as eccentric as they were here, but
it's like, God damn, Germany's a crazy fucking place to be in the 70s.
I think that, you talked about how this maybe film didn't age super well, and I think the dubbing is definitely something that's contributed to that, but I think that the design of the set pieces, just kind of that weird visual styling, I think that it does the opposite. I think that it makes it kind of a timeless sort of thing where it's just
no, definitely. I definitely agree with that. Set design on this was awesome. I really enjoyed that.
I mean, yeah, you can point to kind of some of the effects work and stuff like that obviously is somewhat of its time. But even then, I think that, again, put it in perspective, late 70s, this probably fucking scared the shit out of people when they saw some of the imagery here. So it's still striking. I mean, it's not scary. It's not quote unquote scary. I wouldn't say, but it's definitely striking, both in terms of just the visuals of the movie and in terms of kind of the directions that it takes with like gore and stuff like that. Like it's probably not a lot that you saw at that time, and it's still here and there pretty graphic.
It's unsettling.
It's unsettling. It's obviously just not as
just not
hyper realistic as
right.
things are today. Yeah. So. Do you want to get into spoilers on it?
Yeah, let's dive into the spoilers.
I think I spent a little bit longer there than I thought we would, but that's okay. We had plenty to talk about, and we have plenty more to talk about. So, full spoilers for Suspiria. So we are, of course, talking about witchcraft.
Witch.
That's a movie. That's a movie that talks about witches. Thor: The Dark World. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also that's also the element there I was talking about in the score. Witch.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And of course the movie that we were talking about
is Vivitch, is witch.
Yeah, the witch, the Vivitch. Yeah. So again, that would have been a pretty big tip as to.
They did a really good job of that, though. Like that very innocent American girl going to the ballet place doesn't know jack shit about fucking European witches.
I don't know jack shit about European witches.
I don't know jack shit about European witches, and I sure as hell wouldn't think that the ballerina company that I go to dance in, if I was going to dance in a ballerina company, I wouldn't think that they would be a league of fucking witches. It's pretty fucking crazy though. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. And I mean, I don't know that. Is it like super obvious that there's like a supernatural element to it from the get-go? I mean, there's kind of, the whole beginning's kind of a little bit weird how...
It's just weird.
Like the way that the girl in the beginning gets killed, but I don't remember it being like an obvious... I mean, I guess there was kind of like the eyes in the window, so there's like, okay, there's some weird shit going on, but...
Yeah, but like how would that directly be a witch?
Right, yeah. Like you said, I definitely did not get witch until it was pretty much like... Look, dude, it's witches, Did
the girl that died in the beginning die by that like Igor looking motherfucker? You know what I'm talking about? The one with the teeth?
I don't know, because doesn't the like the head mistress or whatever, doesn't she kind of like you can kind of see her in like proper like fucked up witch form towards the end, right? Like I don't know, I don't remember exactly who it was that killed her, but. I just assumed it was... I guess it probably could have been any of them, right? Because they probably all have kind of true forms. Like, they've probably been around for hundreds of years or whatever, and so they probably have like, you know, these fucked up looking true forms. And so because I think it was like wasn't it like distinct yellow eyes that she kind of sees through the window or something like that?
Yeah, it kind of looks like they're not really cat eyes, but yeah,
something like that though. Yeah,
creature eyes. And then all of a sudden, this big ass hairy arm reaches through the thing and puts her face up against the glass. Yeah, it's pretty terrifying though. He did stab. He like carved away the skin of her sternum and broke the bone, and you could see a beating heart there. And he fucking poked it with the knife. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like, you probably didn't see a lot of shit like that in 1977. I mean, maybe you did in Italy. I don't think you did in America anyway. But
but yeah, the witch, man. I thought that was an interesting thing. I like what they did there with the lightning. Like the head witch was like this, like she was invisible, I guess. Is that what you got there?
Yeah. And then there was just like the lightning or something comes through, and that's how she actually sees her in that one particular sequence.
Yeah, and then everybody died because the head witch died. I thought that was, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
What'd you think about the blind guy? The blind guy and the dog that ate his throat.
See, I think maybe that's why I kind of didn't really think witches. It just seemed like, I guess at that point, more like, I guess at that point, more like supernatural possession type thing.
I gotcha.
Like the dog was
possessed,
or something like that, like some sort of evil spirit housed within it that caused it to kind of bite the boy, and then, you know, I mean, just fucking straight ripped the throat out of his owner, or, you know, the blind
But that's
guy,
just the thing, though. Like the boy, some things I had to look up and read some of this stuff because I didn't quite make sense of all of it, and I didn't know if it was because I kind of had to be honest with you. I think I watched it in kind of two different breaks, but if the boy was obviously part of the witch league, right? The head lady of the ballerina company, who was, if I'm not mistaken, was the closest disciple of the head witch, the original witch. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
And she's really close to this little boy, which I can't remember the relationship between her and the little boy.
I think that the headmistress is the aunt of the boy, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Anyway, so maybe that dog knew that the little kid was a piece of shit, and so he bit the hand of the little kid, and then they take it out on the owner, I guess. But anyways, I just thought it was really cool. I don't really have a lot of other things to say other than the cinematography was awesome. The more so than the cinematography. I mean, the cinematography was neat, but it was more of the use of colors and the set design. I think that stuff was probably my favorite.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that the cinematography just kind of accentuated all of those elements. But
right.
Without those elements, yeah, maybe it's not the most striking. But yeah, the combination of the two certainly is really, really something to watch. I mean, I think if nothing else, you could put this film on mute and be happy for probably an hour and a half. You know, you'd be just depriving yourself of the score. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's just a very visually striking movie. You know, the sequences of the gore and the violence are also very striking. You know, there's a couple tense moments here and there. You know, especially, you know, just kind of the general intrigue of, okay, what's really going on here. There's a lot of that I found really captivating. I know as a first time viewer of this film. So,
what's that girl say? What's that girl? You won't believe me. It's all so strange. And do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know the dialogue.
Yeah, hold on a second here. It's very quotable. It's a very quotable thing.
See, the danger of watching movies that we haven't seen before is, you know, I don't have the benefit of reciting the dialogue of the movies that I've seen 10 plus times. So
let's see here. Hold on a second here. I'll tell you. It all seems so absurd, so fantastic. I don't know if you know what part that was. It was whenever she was saying she was scared to some girl, and the other girl was like, tell me what it is. And she goes, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. It seems all so absurd. And just the dub kind of sucked. It kind of was really distracting. I didn't enjoy the dub at all. That was very off-putting for me. I think that if there was no dialogue and it was all just score and cinematography, I would have got the same from the story, and I probably would have been better for it. That was the lowest point of the movie for me, was just the use of dialogue and the use of the dub. I would have much more appreciated an entire Italian film. I would have enjoyed to see an Italian movie.
Well, I mean, I don't think you're wrong, but that was just kind of how they made movies at the time. So again, that's kind of just it's a weird stylistic quirk of the country of origin here. So it is what it is.
What's your favorite moment in this movie, man?
Go with it. My favorite moment would be, I think, probably just that whole opening sequence in the apartment. You know, the kind of grisly murder of the girl that was fleeing the ballet academy. Just the whole kind of sequence of events. You know, that's really the first real introduction to, you know, what we talked about, the set design, the colors, and everything. Like, it's just all really, really striking. And like, that's like, for me, that was kind of watching this movie, like, it took me maybe a few minutes for this movie to kind of hook me, and I'll be like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm in. Like, that got me. So
right.
I think I have to shout that out as my favorite moment. What about you?
I completely agree with you. The moment, the very intro, I mean, just the simple thing, the use of dialogue, or the use of the score every time the door opens, and when she gets off of the airport. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or not.
Yeah. Just kind of, yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
Bingo, right there. I'm a sucker for things happening and musical cues. I don't know what it is. I like my trailers made that way. I like the use of that in movies, and I think it's awesome. And right from the get-go, you get it, and then from there up until when that first girl's murdered, I was hooked. I liked it. I was all in. And then it gets super trippy because then they start. There's one scene where she's walking and you get like this gypsy woman cleaning like fucking silverware or something, and she shines the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she kind of faints after that or something.
Yeah, it's like she gets really weak or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, she gets Yep.
And I watched the movie. It definitely wasn't very high quality, but the way that light was shot, and the way like I don't know, but you could see the dust in the air and stuff, and I thought it was really awesome. Just it's real simple. It's a real simple thing, but I don't know. I could just appreciate that one shot was really fucking cool. I really liked it. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
I think you might be trying to say that it was technically well crafted.
Technically well crafted, for sure. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
All right. Well, I think that's Suspiria.
You heard it here first. It's technically well crafted, man.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, indeed. So let's jump into the next movie that we had on our docket, and that is Audition, hailing from Japan, released October 2nd, 1999. So again, the second of our pre-2000 movies. So it's been a couple decades since this movie was released. It's written by Daisuke Tengan, directed by Takashi Miike. Stars, we got a couple Asian films that we're going to talk about, and so I apologize in advance for all the names that I fuck up, and I very well have already fucked up a couple, but I'm going to say
passion.
Ryo Ishibashi, Ii Shina, and Jun Kunimura. I think I got those relatively okay there.
Jun Kunimura.
So Audition, after a widower stages a phony audition to meet his potential new wife, the dark past of the woman he chooses begins to affect their relationship. Non-spoilers for Audition. What'd you think?
I enjoyed Suspiria more than I enjoyed Audition.
Okay, I agree with that sentiment.
I don't know what to say about this movie. This movie here was kind of strange.
Well, I think all of these movies are a little strange in their own way, but yeah.
I think this one more in particular, like, I don't know, like, it didn't feel quite horror up until, like, the last, I don't know, it didn't feel like a horror movie up until the last half. It was a very slow crawl to the horror aspects of this movie. And I think the horror aspects of this movie aren't really, like, the first movie's about witches, right? So, and if you skipped the spoiler section because you didn't want to know that the first movie was about witches, I apologize. Maybe are we allowed to reference the spoiler section of the previous movie?
It's fine.
Okay.
It is what it. Yeah, I mean, Suspiria came out in '77. Sue us.
That's true. Okay, so the first movie is about witches, where this one is more of it's more of like a dark intrinsic look on people and like, you know, just people in general. Like this one is like a weird slasher movie in a way, but it's not, you know. There's a lot of character development in this one that I think wasn't present in Suspiria. Not that Suspiria needed it in any real way, but this one was more of a character piece than Suspiria was for sure. And there were brutal moments, I thought. It didn't get incredibly gory, but it was just very unsettling, the things that happened in this one. What'd you think?
I thought that this movie to me is kind of like it's the tale of two halves. I mean, it's really what it is. And interestingly enough, I actually think that both halves of this movie are very uncomfortable to watch, but for extremely different reasons. I think that slow crawl is probably a good way to put it, because I found myself kind of disinterested for most of the first hour. And
That's
basically
fair.
Yeah, subsequent 55 minutes, I was pretty captivated by it. But I think that I don't know, it's tough for me to kind of.
The thing is you wouldn't have been captivated. You wouldn't have been captivated if you didn't have the first half.
Kind of, yeah. I do think that the setup is necessary, but I also think that...
I think it went on longer than it needed to, for sure.
I think that's probably my issue with it, and a movie we'll talk about very soon after this, I think, is a similar circumstance of somewhat of a slow burn, but one that still was interesting from the get-go.
Absolutely.
Whereas this one just kind of... in terms of, like... I guess I knew kind of the general premise of this movie and kind of what it was, and you can look at the poster and you kind of go like, okay, clearly some batshit's going to happen at some point, and so you're kind of just anticipating that, but it doesn't really tip its hand toward any of that. Again, I don't know that's necessarily a fault of the film itself, but I mean, it's a literal hour basically before anything really, really kind of before shit hits the fan, you know, if you want to put it that way, and I just kind of felt like there are ways to structure a movie like this where there's a little bit more intrigue to it. And for me, it was just kind of, I guess I was expecting horror aspects to it. And basically kind of what I got was just not that for the first hour. It's not to say that it's bad for an hour. I don't think I'm saying that. I just think it's just kind of maybe playing against expectations.
You're watching not even a rom-com. You're just watching a drama for the first hour of the movie.
Sort of. Yeah, you know, guy's wife died and he wants companionship, and it's just kind of a look at that. But the reason I think I say that the first half is uncomfortable before it really gets all horror-y on us is it felt, and it's not a criticism of the film, I think it's just kind of a criticism of the characters and, you know, the kind of the actual plot itself, is that it feels very misogynistic, and that's why it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's Japan, it's 99, it's older. I think those are just
right, and
I think those are cultural differences. I think
it's not that. It's not even that. I think it's actually kind of a meta commentary on that in some ways, or at least the way I read it is that it's more a sense of, here's this first hour about kind of, I mean, you know, he's basically having this fake audition to
score a wife.
To score a wife, which, you know, his wife died, you know, and, you know, he wants to find a new companion. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but just kind of the way that he goes about that by kind of going through this whole thing.
It's true, though. I think the meta thing you're talking about, I mean, we can't really get into it until we get into spoilers, but I mean, there's a lot of references that the girl he meets makes towards that meta. You know what I mean?
And in a way, I think that whole idea makes... I think it can actually let you look at the movie, or at least the second half of the movie, through a very different lens, in the sense of you look at it from the flip perspective and you can kind of take a different reading on it. It's still, at its core, something that's pretty horrifying to watch, regardless of whatever kind of spin you give to it. But I just felt like in terms of like so I guess what I'm trying to say, if I can try to surmise it, is that I liked a lot of what it was going for. I just felt like the execution itself for me it was just too slow moving for me to really kind of get grabbed by it until until it really hits hard. I just kind of think that maybe it's just a pacing issue, I think, more than an actual plotting issue. Is kind of the way I would look at it. But I did enjoy this film. I would agree that I think Suspiria hit the mark for me more. That's a movie that grabbed me from the beginning, as I mentioned.
Yeah, I think now that you put kind of like that misogynistic kind of spin on it, I never really thought about it. But it kind of adds a totally new dimension to this movie, I think. It's a good thing we have a dialogue about this stuff, because I never really thought about it. But the things that happen, like I said, the things that happen later in the movie, it's almost kind of like a poetic thing that happens, and it kind of puts it out on front stage there, and I didn't realize that. Especially coming off of something like Suspiria, where Suspiria is just a straightforward thing, you know what I mean? It's a mystery movie, and there's mystery and intrigue in it, but the things that the movie's trying to convey, it's much more two-dimensional. It's very simple. It's well made. I think it's probably better made, but yeah, it's I'm thinking about a lot of things running through my head right now after you said that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a well shot movie. It's not a movie that has kind of the style and flair of a Suspiria, I wouldn't say. But
when shit hits the fan, it hits it really well. It
does, and I think that we'll get into it a little bit more in spoilers. But I think that again, once the proverbial shit does hit the fan, then I think the movie just kind of steps it up for me. And I really, I don't want to say that I quote unquote enjoyed the last 45 or 55 minutes of this movie, but I will say that it hits pretty hard, and it's uncomfortable for the reasons you would expect it to be uncomfortable, for the reasons you expect horror to be named horror for a reason, So, do you have any other general thoughts? You just want to get into spoilers on this?
Yeah, no,
one?
We can get into spoilers on it.
Okay. So full spoilers for Audition. Yes, so I guess we can get a little bit more into specifics here.
But you talked about misogyny, and she says you can't escape if you don't have your feet, and I think I don't know. There's a lot of poetic shit here. Like it's difficult for me to make these connections without actually like taking the time to think about it, because it's literally just hitting me, But think about all the pinpoints where she tortured him at. She paralyzed him, and she took his voice. He couldn't talk, right? And then she fucking pins him in the belly, and that hurts, and it's sensitive. And then she sticks the fucking things in her eyeballs, and then she chops off his fucking foot.
Yeah.
I think there's like a poetic thing. I think there's a poetic thing there, talking about what happens. Maybe you shouldn't include this because it makes me sound like a bumbling idiot. I don't know, but I think you could probably draw parallels to that and the way the way women are treated, and the way that culture, the way that their expected roles. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm.
Well, I mean, maybe we're agreeing here, but I think that the way I see it framed within the both halves is the first half has basically this perspective. I mean, it's all obviously told through the perspective of Oyama. He's the widower in this, but I think that when you follow him as the POV character for the first hour, you see this kind of blatant objectification of women in general, and you don't really see a whole lot of kind of what Asami, kind of what the depth to her character is. There's moments here and there where he kind of probes a little bit about it. But then the second half, it switches from being kind of this misogynistic, again, look at women in general to like she is now getting revenge or something like that. It's kind of just more like it's almost,
and she
feels almost more feminist in the sense that like it's a retaliation against all of the shit that she went through in her life.
Correct.
Against that overwhelming objectification, and all of these things. Basically, it's just kind of, in a way, you can look at it as, you know, she is basically getting back at him for kind of what it is. Now, it's obviously taken to an extreme. And, you know, certainly as the film, I think, is still shown from the POV of Oyama. And so, you experience that body horror with him. And so it's traumatic. You know, it's pretty fucking horrifying to kind of, it's extremely uncomfortable to watch this movie as that whole sequence is unfolding. But I think that if you look at kind of just the, you know, again, you take a step back, you know, if you're not caught up in the moment of it, if you're not caught up in just kind of, you know, the horror of it, you can kind of, you take a different reading of the movie in a way that it's not so concerned with what Asami is about. And obviously she's got a lot of issues, you know, and because of the way that she was raised, because of the abuse that she suffered, like there's a lot of shit in her background that obviously kind of made her this way. And it's taken to the absolute extreme of that, but it's interesting to kind of see those different readings. Like, you know, I don't think about that. I don't think you thought about that when you're watching the movie. You're just like, oh my God, you know, she's like, this is fucking terrible. And it is. Yeah,
there's and I'm doing a quick search here, just because, like I said, I didn't think about any of this shit when I first watched it.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is that, you know, you experience it in the moment, and it's just, you know, it's the immediate reaction of, you know, you're experiencing the story with the POV character. You don't see it from the other perspective. She is the villain. You know, she is this crazy bitch that's, you know, injecting with all this shit and putting all these, you know, needles in him and cutting his fucking foot off. Like, you know, there's a lot of shit in this. You're just like, oh my God. Like, you know, she's Jigsaw, or she's, you know, whatever, you know, she's just this horrifying presence.
There's a good article, though, I'm breezing over here. It's on filmotomy.com, and the article is the woman of your nightmares. Is Audition about misogyny or about misandry? Is that how you say that? Misandry?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's written by Bianca Gardner, and it's really fucking deep. Like the film's ending subverts the rules of horror and places the man into a role of the woman in a truly horrific scene of dominance and forced submission. And then it goes on to talk about how the female lead, I'm not gonna pretend to try to pronounce her name because I'll fuck it up. But she's almost the personification of the male's lead in guilt of trying to move on. So it's like a double-sided coin. And it's adding a whole nother layer. I might have to watch this movie again. Because it's adding...
I think that can be said of a lot of these movies that we're talking about, is that there's an excitement to watching them for the first time and kind of seeing things as they unfold, but a lot of these movies have layers upon layers to them. And I think that definitely in talking about this movie just for this brief amount of time, yeah, it's something that you're like, oh shit, I didn't pick up on that. I need to go back and watch it for this reason. And
right.
So I think in a weird sort of way too, you might actually pick up more things like, you know, that first hour, like, oh, it feels really slow. It might feel more earned. It might feel more justified if you kind of take some of these readings back into a second viewing, into a third viewing and stuff like that. Right. It's not necessarily the case, but
like I said, I think Suspiria was just a well executed. It's not really two dimensional. That sells it short, but I think it's a.
Oh, it is straightforward though, as you said.
It is a straightforward movie. Where I think Audition, now that we're actually really digging into it, just talking to you with it, it's actually like I can't even really carry on a conversation with you because my mind's being blown a little bit because I didn't think about all this stuff. Because all I got from it was it was real slow in the beginning, and then it fucking ramped up and it got really weird, and then holy shit, this is really uncomfortable to watch, and now it's over. And that's kind of what I got from it. I was like, this movie kind of flew over my head. It was okay, you know. I didn't think it was a bad movie, but I didn't really, you know what I mean? I didn't get into it.
Yeah, but I do think it ends abruptly. I think that's probably a fair statement to make.
And maybe the fact that I don't know. I don't know why because we're going to talk about the next movie and the movie after that, and I feel like those are movies that are maybe not. Never mind. I don't want them getting too convoluted, but this one flew. I can humbly say that this one flew over my head. I didn't get any of that shit. I thought I went into it thinking of a two-dimensional movie, straightforward. And now that you brought things to light, I am my mind's kind of blown.
Well, clearly I'm not the first one to bring them to light. And I think that it's worth noting that I would imagine that the article you mentioned, there's probably many others. It would honestly be probably a little bit more enlightening to read a female perspective on this.
The one I read, was a female's perspective.
Well, I noticed that it was Bianca. I would imagine is probably a woman that wrote that article. So I think that would probably shed a lot more light on it too.
And oddly enough, she wrote it 7 months
ago. What little
ago.
I have. Okay, well that's timely.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, so I think that there's it's safe to say that this movie is. It's got some layers to it. I think we can agree with that.
But I would agree, and yeah, definitely if it's something that intrigues you, if you're watching this movie and you're kind of in the boat of like, I don't quite get it. Maybe it might be worthwhile to kind of look that up and see if there's some extra meanings that you can glean out of the scenes in this movie, and I think that might enhance your reading of it. I think it definitely would enhance your reading of the movie. But.
Absolutely, because coming from somebody that did not come into it expecting that, and it's flown over my head. I kind of just thought the movie was okay, but knowing that there's layers here that can be explored, it actually kind of makes me very intrigued to kind of dig into the movie again and see what can I pull out of the movie. And I think there's something to be said about I don't want to sound like an idiot because a lot of times I can pull stuff out and I have the capability of understanding, but maybe it's more difficult to understand and pull deeper meanings and stuff out of movies when you experience it once and then there's a language barrier and then you're kind of distracted by a phone. Sometimes you're looking at your phone and stuff at the same time. So maybe I don't know. I don't know why I didn't get this movie and why I didn't.
I would say looking at your phone might make it difficult to read subtitles.
Yeah, it's true.
That could be part of it. But at the same time, this is a movie that for the first hour or so, you'd kind of be like, all right, okay, it's only been 20 minutes. Okay, it's been 30 minutes. There's an element of that too, I would say. But I would say, again, just going off my initial viewing, I was really impressed with the back half of this movie. I just, it was the tale of two halves for me, and I thought the back half was just really, really striking. More than just the actual sequence of the torture of Asami, injecting him and needling him, sure. But like just like the kind of, it kind of flashes between that and kind of the nightmare sequences that he has, and we kind of see, I think, within that at least a grain of the truth of what Asami's backstory is. There's the whole sequence where we see there's the moving thing in the sack. And then it's the guy with like the long hair that comes out and he's missing both his feet. She vomits into the dog bowl and like he just laps it up. I was just like, what the fuck am I watching?
Pretty fucked up. Yeah.
There's some seriously fucked up shit. And I guess it starts, when he goes to the bar that's been closed and he sees the flashbacks of like, was it like the tongue or something, and the few fingers and the blood kind of pouring out of the door. Like there's just a lot of, again, once it gets into the horror-y aspects of it, like it's really, really striking.
Yeah, and it ramps up, bro. It ramps up. It's fucking night and day.
Yeah, and I said I really enjoyed that. I just was just kind of like, okay, well, I mean, I get the first hour is obvious setup. You need the setup, but I kind of was just like, let's get to it already, But when it did get to that, I was really, really struck by that. So I enjoyed that aspect of it quite a bit.
That torture scene was really fucking uncomfortable, though.
It was. So I can talk about my favorite moment then.
Yeah, what's your favorite moment, man?
Kitty, 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 kitty.
Oh yeah, it's fucked up.
Kitty, 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 kitty. I think it was deeper, deeper. Yeah. That doesn't quite roll off the tongue as kitty, kitty, kitty. But yeah, just apparently that was. I think I read that was kind of. I don't know if it was ad-libbed at the time, or if like she was kind of doing it, and then the director was just like, "Fuck yeah, I'd like to keep doing that" or something like that. It just
it's pretty twisted
to the unsettling nature of the whole thing. Okay, I'm reading it here. She was initially whispering her lines while filming the scene, and then after discussion with Mike, the director, they said that she should actually say the lines to make the scene scarier. Mission accomplished.
That's it. It was pretty unsettling, pretty fucking uncomfortable for sure.
Yeah, that was some harrowing stuff to witness. So that was kind of my favorite moment because again, that's kind of, I think, for me as someone that was only really familiar with this movie by virtue of its poster, which is Asami with, I think she's holding up the needle with her gloves and kind of the whole setup. Like I was just like, well, when's that coming? So when it did come, and then it was just kind of that, I was just like, it was good. It was kind of that payoff that you kind of, at least I was waiting for. So that's my pick. What's your pick for favorite moment of this movie?
Yeah, that's definitely it. That's 100% it. On that, I feel like I kind of, I was into it for the first 15 minutes, and then I kind of feel like I kind of probably put my brain on fucking autopilot until something started happening. And then when that happened, I was 100% into it. And I feel like that's probably why I missed on a lot of those different deeper layers there, because I was 100% on autopilot watching the first half. But when it steps it up, it's quite uncomfortable to watch. It's like, God, there's only a handful of movies that make me kind of uncomfortable. Like when you kind of maybe want to think about turning away, but it's like, no, I'm not a bitch. I'm not going to turn away. I'm going to watch all this shit. And I watch it, and it's like, what are they going to show? What are they going to show? What are they going to do? And I actually kind of got some Antichrist vibes in watching it, just because I was so uncomfortable. I just was on needles watching it. Did you ever see Antichrist?
I have not seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
It's pretty fucked up. That's a pretty fucked up movie. And that movie made me kind of squirm a little bit. And this one kind of made me squirm a little bit. And it does so, and it's not like the most graphic thing you'll ever watch. It's not that. It's just the way that they executed that tension. It was very well done. So kudos to Audition for making me uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, definitely. It reminded me of the Obscure video from Duran Gray. I know you're a big fan of Duran Gray, the Japanese rock band.
Yeah, the Japanese death metal band. I don't know if it's death metal, but
they've gone through a few different iterations, Visual K to basically just more or less death metal these days. But yeah, I think that so they put out this video for this song called Obscure. I was trying to figure out what exactly the year it was. I think it's kind of right around this time. I don't know the exact year it was, but it's kind of got the same like just weird fucked up things of just like people vomiting and just weird like crazy ass like imagery happening in the video. And so I was actually kind of reminded by that. Obviously there's the connection there that both things are Japanese, so maybe that's why my brain is associating them. But I got shades of that and just kind of weird, uncomfortable, unsettling things to watch. Which is, it's you don't. I don't know. I feel like a lot of horror movies don't really unsettle me that way.
No,
and this is one in recent memory that did kind of touch on that in a way that I think few do. So I enjoyed that. It's in a weird sort of masochistic way, I guess. But
jackass.
Anyway, that is Audition.
Although when the phone rang, you remember when the phone rang and that bag went and it fucking rolled over?
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck's in that bag? The fuck is in that bag?
I mean, it was moving. I was like, there's got to be a person in there.
Yeah, it was a person with fucking one finger and no tongue and no feet. Anyways, that was Audition. Yeah. Let's move on to The Wailing. I'm excited to talk about The Wailing.
I am too. Also, side note, album Vulgar by Duran Gray released 2003, so a few years after Audition. So
it's probably inspired.
Maybe it was inspired by it. Yep. That's very possible. The Wailing comes from South Korea. And this is the first of our more recent films, released May 12, 2016, written and directed by Na Hong-jin. Again, bear with me with the
Here we go.
Names.
Do it passionately.
It stars Kwak Do-won, Hwang Jung-min, Chun Woo-hee, Jun Kunimura, and Kim Hwan-hee. Now, you might recognize Jun Kunimura. He was also in Audition. That's pretty interesting connection there.
He was the fucking friend of the main guy.
Yeah. He was the friend of the main guy.
He sure as fuck was, dude. Yeah. Holy shit. Oh, fucking mind blown.
I enjoy when we have these unintentional connections. We did the same thing with Bad Times at the El Royale and First Man. We're just like, holy shit, these movies are set in the same year. Like, what the fuck? I feel like when I was putting the script together, I had that same moment of like, oh, fuck. Like, I recognized the name, and I was just like, oh, shit, it was that guy.
It was, yes.
Yeah. Almost, 17 years apart, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. The Wailing tells the story of a policeman that investigates a series of mysterious killings and illnesses that result soon after a stranger arrives to his village.
I ate this movie up. Really, really, really enjoyed this movie.
Did you now?
I did. I don't know if I enjoyed it more than I don't know. I appreciate Suspiria, but I think I probably enjoyed The Wailing more. Is that fair?
I mean, I thought this movie was fucking incredible. So, yeah, that seems fair.
Yeah, like I mean, Suspiria did some really cool shit, and it was from the 70s, and that's really mind-blowing that they did that shit in the 70s, but The Wailing's fucking really good. I really enjoyed The Wailing. Yeah. So, why did you enjoy The Wailing?
I think that it is kind of the best combination of different elements of horror in one of the best packages. I mean, this might be one of my favorite horror movies ever. Like, I think it's jumped to that conversation.
God damn. Yeah, let's get into it, man.
And I'm not going to get too much into kind of what the other movies are in that category that I like, but it takes bits and pieces, I think, from things that I like. I mean, there's some very obvious, I'll get into it in spoilers. There's some very obvious inspiration from some other horror movies, classic horror movies, I would say. And it just wraps them up in this package of intrigue, of mystery, gore. Like, there's just so many elements of very just different things. We talked about it when we were talking about Suspiria. Like, this is a horror thing. This is a horror thing. Like, it's all of that in one, and it does all of it really well. Yeah, and like, it's a long movie, but like Audition was it was a sub 2 hour movie, but it felt long because of the way it was paced. This is a movie that it has that Suspiria type thing of it hooks you in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't take more than a couple minutes for you to think, okay, what the fuck's happening here? Like, I want to know what the fuck's happening here.
But the characters are fucking well done. The characters are really intriguing. They're awesome.
Characters are well done. Like, everything in this is good. Yeah, maybe in that way, maybe it's a combination of, I think, what Suspiria and Audition did well is, it's hooking. It hooks you from the beginning, but it also keeps you invested with these characters. And, well, I think the characters grow in really meaningful ways, and I think that the plot develops in very meaningful ways, and ways that are unexpected, that are challenging. And I mean, I was so I started watching this at like 11 at night, and it's close to a 3 hour movie, and I was just like, I got shit to do tomorrow, but I don't care. I got to finish this movie. I did, yeah.
I watched it in 2 chunks.
Yeah. It was a movie for me that I realistically probably should have tabled and finished like the next day, but I was just like, I gotta know. It was that kind of movie for me. Like, I feel like I don't know, man. Like, this movie just really grabbed me.
Good.
Yeah.
And when we did the art. We did the art for the movies.
Mm-hmm. I think you had seen it when we did it, and I had not seen it.
Yeah, and I was pretty pumped up when we were doing the art. It's like, yeah, this movie's really good.
And this is. I mean, I think I more or less suggested a lot of the movies that we ended up talking about. But this was one that I had like heard like really good things about, but I didn't know anything about it other than it's South Korean and it's pretty recent. Like that was the extent of my knowledge of kind of what the movie itself was about. So even when we were doing the art, like I was looking at the art, like that doesn't tell me anything about the story, which is kind of nice. I mean, I tried to take that approach with all of these movies where if I didn't really have any sort of preconceived notions about it, I kind of just treated it as its own thing. And this one was for me is like, well, I don't really need to look at the plot synopsis before I watch it. Like I know I'm going to watch it. Like I feel like that might take away from it. So I kind of just walked in blind. And sometimes that's kind of the best way to experience a movie. And it's a way that I don't really experience all that often because I'm the type of person that watches trailers, that looks at posters and, follows internet discussions and all. And sometimes it's difficult, especially with like movies that I know I'm going to be interested in. Like it's hard for me to stay away from material pertaining to that movie because I see new things and they get me more excited about it. They take away from the surprises of the movie, certainly, but it's still exciting to view that. And this is a movie for me that was just like, well, I've heard good things about it, but I don't really know anything about it. So you watch it and I'm just like blown away by this fucking thing, man. Like I gotta say,
incredible movie, man.
I gotta say, man, my knowledge of South Korean cinema is admittedly limited, but I can say
really fucking good.
I can say that what I have seen has been absolutely phenomenal. And again, maybe it's just that small selection of things that I had heard were good and ended up being true. But the Vengeance trilogy,
incredible shit.
Park Chan-wook, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Old Boy is incredible. Lady Vengeance, The Host, from 2006 maybe, Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer, what?
That was a co-production, I think, between South Korea and somewhere else, but it was Bong Joon-ho. It was the same director as The Host. So South Korean director, and then the obvious
incredible fucking movie
of Train to Busan, which we watched not too long ago, which is another example of like recent horror that's been fucking phenomenal, and we could easily do a whole episode on that.
Fucking maybe we should, dude. That's an incredible movie.
I'm not opposed to it, but again, one of the conditions of this episode was let's do things we haven't seen. We've seen Train to Busan, and holy shit, if you haven't seen that movie, do it.
Fucking watch it.
Do it. Yeah, absolutely. But
if you haven't seen this movie, fucking watch it. Although I think that this movie is fucking incredible. I don't want to sell it short. But I think maybe Train to Busan may be more approachable for everybody because there's no like slow burn to Train to Busan. It's snappy. It's balls to the wall the whole time. At the same time, it never diminishes either. You know what? Like it doesn't, just because it's balls to the wall the entire time doesn't mean that the characters are any more shallow than they are in this movie. But this one's just very different. Where Train to Busan's going to be crazy ass zombie apocalypse kind of shit, going crazy all the time. This one's more of a mystery, and it's very unsettling, and it's very what the fuck is going on? And so they're kind of it's a different kind of movie, but Train to Busan's fucking really good, and so is this. So do yourself a favor and have a South Korean film weekend and watch this and Train to Busan. You're gonna have yourself a really good fucking time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just really blown away by this movie. I was blown away by the cinematography of this movie.
Yes. That was yes. I'm a cinematography guy. You know this.
I knew I was gonna hit your weak spot there. So I was like, if he doesn't agree with me, then I don't know this man at all. He's a stranger on the microphone.
It's a beautifully shot movie. It's very nice.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Yakshamish.
It's incredibly well shot. The colors, I tell you what I really liked about this, and is it took a lot of like the way that everything is framed, the framing of the shots, I think is what makes this one really beautiful. The way the characters kind of move in and out of like the symmetrical, things that they set forward. I don't know if I sound like an idiot. Like I said, I'm drinking out of this fucking. I have this massive.
You got a giant tankard of beer.
Yes, it's called the Task Force Wolfhound, and I got it from the Goodwill, and it's fucking huge. And I've been drinking. It holds 3.5 beers. And so, anyways, I've filled it up twice. So I'm getting kind of loose. But it's really fun. It's a beautiful movie, man. And not only that, but like when it starts getting into, I want to pull up some frames and so I can talk about it and flip through some pictures. But when you start getting into the more, there's one spot in particular that I thought was incredible. And it's at the end of the movie. But it's I don't know. It's probably one of my favorite spots. We could probably dive into spoilers. You want to dive into spoilers?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this movie. So yes, absolutely. Let's do full spoilers for The Wailing. And do you have something specific you're thinking of?
When you realize that this guy is the spirit or the devil, I guess he says he's the devil, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite because a literal like I am the devil more, or he's just like he's a demon and he's just fucking with the priest that he's talking to or something like that. But he's clearly an agent of hell or something along those lines. Yeah.
Right. When he exposes himself to the deacon, and shows his form, I really like that. I thought that was awesome. And it's real simple, and I also like the whole. I like the shaman. I thought all the scenes with that shaman were fucking awesome.
And just. Yeah, the colors in that, the whole sequence of, I guess, basically the exorcism that he conducts.
Yeah.
It's really fucking striking. That whole sequence for me kind of threw me for a loop because it kind of seemed like a little bit out of place. And so I guess I'll elaborate on that a little bit. But generally speaking, I do agree. I was really taken by the way that it was framed, the colors, and really everything, the music. But for me, I think that what really made this movie so intriguing for me, and it ties into what you just talked about, the demon imagery, the shaman and all that. For the first half of this movie, I was convinced it was a Contagion type thing.
Yeah, you think where he's looking at he goes to that first place where that guy's all fucked up looking, and he finds like these spores.
Yeah, and I thought it would be something along those lines where like there's just some crazy disease or something like that. Like maybe it's not like eating mushrooms that's making people crazy, like, but like there's some sort of disease that's spreading throughout this little town, and it's basically turning people into zombie-esque type creatures. And so that was just my train of thought, was like, oh, zombies, or something, or infected, or 28 days later type shit. Like that was my train of thought. And so when and it's these people in this small village, and I don't really know anything about the culture, and they start talking about a shaman, like, oh, it's demons and something. Like, oh, it's not fucking demons, guys, come on. Like, I was just like, oh, it's a disease, and it's just kind of maybe people that
supernatural shit, and then
right, instead of resorting to like medical explanations, their inclination is we jump to religious explanations. And as someone that's not overly religious, I was just kind of like, please. That was my inclination. And so there was this general tension throughout the whole thing of like this all seems kind of like, so, and that's what I mean. Like they start doing this whole extended sequence of an exorcism, and I'm like, oh man, this is a big fucking waste of time. Come to find out, it's not a big fucking waste of time. It's actually extremely story pertinent. And so like that whole kind of, it kind of really jumps away from that whole idea of it being a contagion and really just goes really into the deep end, with the last hour of the movie of just like, no, like, gotcha, it's not just that, like, no, they're right. There's some serious elements of the supernatural at play here. And I was just kind of like, oh, fuck me. I okay. All right. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't quite ready for that, but I really enjoyed that as kind of a twist. And then, the actual kind of build up and resolution of that was really kind of this complex web of entities fighting one another. And I don't know, man, like I don't know that I fully get this movie, but I would be thrilled to watch this movie over and over again.
I'm with you.
And pick up things each time. Like, this is definitely a movie that maybe, again, because it's one of those things of, well, you're spending some of your time watching, reading subtitles, and maybe you're missing out on things here and there, and, it's just the general first time through. You can't expect to quite get everything in one go. But
it's a very complex movie, though. It's got a complex story, I think. There's I think you got spirits and shit, and you got a lot of moving pieces. I think that's probably the best way to put it. There's a lot of moving pieces to this movie, and I think a common. I recently watched. This is going to be. I don't want to derail the conversation here, but I recently watched The Devil and the Blacksmith. And you learn that demons are kind of they're very misleading creatures, I think, and you kind of just don't know, like you have the guy that's sitting in his house and he's got like a shrine of pictures of like these diseased looking people.
Yeah, some seriously fucked up things going on in that house.
Yeah, but you don't. I still, like I said, I don't fully understand all of the pieces of this movie. I want to, and I will most certainly watch this again. I want to watch Audition again because I feel like I missed out on like 90% of the depth of that movie. I appreciate this movie just from the way this movie was made, the forward momentum of this movie, and the ramp up, and the pinnacle of the story, and the way everything concludes, and I think it's incredible. But I think I probably missed a little bit of the full picture. And I will watch this again. It's really fucking good.
I mean, let's not spend too much time here because we could be here for a while if we tried to really splay out maybe the elements of this story, but let me I guess give you my general reading of events, and then you can
tell
me
good.
if you read things the same
Especially
way, or if you felt kind of
buzzed here. You can probably conduct the conversation.
So I kind of, obviously there's, you talked about kind of maybe the demons are prone to deception and stuff like that. So I kind of read it as the Moomyoung, who's like the woman, like the mysterious kind of woman that he sees here and there, and at the end is like, don't go back. Like, she seems to be, I don't know if she's necessarily an angel, but I think she's some sort of guardian, or force for good, I guess, basically. I guess what I was kind of, I don't know if I'm quite grasping it all right. She basically points out that the Japanese stranger and the shaman are basically in cahoots with each other. And I didn't know if that was something that was from the get-go, or if there was something with the exorcism where, because it was interrupted, part of the demon went into the shaman, corrupted him at that point. Like, was he a force for good and then he got corrupted, and that's why...
I don't fucking know.
Yeah, so that was kind of what
doesn't make any sense is because that shaman was on the way back. What makes me say I don't know is because he drove through that he was driving down the road and he got all fucked up and he couldn't see. You remember that?
Yeah. But, and then it was kind of in his head. So I didn't know if that was like the demon fighting against him, saying, no, you need to come back and help. I mean, obviously, it's pretty obvious when he takes the picture at the end that he's been corrupted to some extent. Right. He's been taken over to some extent. But I didn't know if that was an element of like the shaman fighting through it, like it wasn't like a full possession or full corruption of him, so he could kind of rebel against it, and when he goes against the woman, he vomits blood, and it's pretty gross, actually.
It's one of those excessively long vomits too.
Yeah, it was a Team America-esque vomit, but in a more very serious context, where it's just like, ooh, that's not that. Like, I was like, can you survive doing that? Like that's like, you're dead.
It's a lot of shit, dude.
So I was like, I'm pretty sure there's some organs that came up there too. I guess I didn't quite get exactly what was going on there, because to me it seemed like, okay, the Japanese man, the stranger, had obviously been corrupted to some extent, but I thought it was kind of the same thing where maybe the demon can jump hosts or something like that, or something, because when the Japanese man is fleeing from the group of the cop and his friends. They go after him to kill him. Like when he's hiding underneath that rock, it felt, I mean, I guess maybe it was just the way it was filmed and was maybe trying to mislead you as well, but it seemed to me like there was a genuine element of fear to him, of just like, this is the actual Japanese guy, like he's somehow fought out of this, and just the way that he reacted in general, like, he kind of, well, because there's the interaction where the woman comes up to him, and like he doesn't have like this super violent vomiting reaction. He's like, they kind of just look at each other, and then he runs off to like find the guy in the car who's not there anymore. So I was just kind of like, okay, I didn't know exactly, like it seemed like maybe the demon could come in and out, and then I'm pretty sure the guy is dead, but then maybe the demon just takes back control of the body to be its host at the end when he's in the cave and turns into the actual demon-looking thing. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Are you as confused, or kind of, I mean, are there things in there that you're like, no, that's not right, or you're like, yeah, I don't really know either?
No, I definitely don't really know.
Okay.
No, it's a bit of a fever dream there at the end. I feel like it's one of those movies kind of where it's kind of like a Hereditary movie. You know what I mean? Where you can walk away with it I think there's something that they're trying to say, right? There is a concise story here, but it's told in a way to where you can watch it a couple times and get more from it. You know what I mean? And I think that's a sign of a really good fucking movie. And it's told in such a pervasive way where you really don't know,
Well, and I think moreover, it doesn't matter that neither of us quite grasp the full aspect of it. Like, there's so much here that still makes it an extremely compelling watch on its first go. It's not like the main characters don't know. So fuck this. Yeah. I mean, the way it's presented is very much kind of this mystery, and even when it's kind of filled in, the gaps are filled in, it's still kind of, there's still an element of, okay, what exactly is happening here? And
even at the end of the movie, where at the very end of the movie, the conclusion of the movie obviously doesn't center around the demons and the fucking angels or anything else like that, or any protective forces or whatever Asian kind of things there are. You know what I mean? Because that's another thing too, right?
Yeah,
like we can understand
probably a general, yeah.
We can understand Hereditary maybe a little bit more because we're more familiar with the symbology or the references that are put in this movie. But I don't know shit about any sort of Asian mythology. I don't know.
Yeah. There's probably elements of that are just lost on us just due to cultural differences. Yeah, I think that's fair.
So at that time, trying to understand, this is a movie where I think in order to have a full understanding of everything, you need to have a solid understanding of the cultural references that are in it. Because I would 100% say that, I mean, just even the use of the shaman, what do their shamans do? You know what I mean? What are the stories behind their shamans? We don't pick up on that. We don't know the in-depth things that are going on with those characters, So I think on broad strokes, I think you can understand it without having to read it if you really pay attention to what's going on. But there's going to be elements in there that you're going to have to do a little bit of research on, just as Western individuals. You know what I mean? I don't think we'll pick up on everything unless you actually read on it. But I can say that it's really fucking good.
Yeah. Well, I think it seemed like you were possibly leading to this point. Maybe I just was kind of thinking you were going to, but I think what you at least kind of reminded me of when you started talking is that even if you don't quite grasp the whole nature of it, it doesn't matter, because at its core, it's a story of a father and his daughter.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think that it resonates because of that particular storyline. It doesn't matter that we don't understand it, because at the same time, those characters don't really understand the whole scope of things either. But there's still a real horror to the development that the father goes through in the course of basically trying to save his daughter from this demon, from whatever
disease or whatever
thing is happening. Yeah, exactly. Whether it's disease, whether it's straight up possession,
and it's really good too because he's a fucking cop. Like protecting is he's a father and he's a cop, and his little mountain town is fucking falling apart, and his daughter's falling apart, and you see this really outstanding. I'm just a real simple, normal dude, and it's this slow. I mean, because like you said, it's 3 hours long. It's a very slow descent into madness. It's really fucking good, and I know I say that all the time. But it's just an incredible movie.
It's a true statement here. Yeah, I mean, there's a general corruption to the innocence here, both in the father and daughter.
Absolutely, and you can really tell it too when he goes and like fucking kills that guy's dog. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, it's a real descent into madness. The guy doesn't know what to do. He's trying to grapple with the supernatural shit. He doesn't know if it's fucking diseases. There's a naked woman standing outside the precinct in the middle of a storm. He doesn't know what the fuck's going on. You got that one crazy bitch throwing rocks at the crime scene, just throwing rocks at him. Just all sorts of crazy shit. All sorts of crazy shit.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch it another time. I'm almost certainly going to pick up the Blu-ray for this very soon. I can say that on my behalf.
Mom got me a $150 gift certificate for my birthday. I think I'll buy it on the Blu-rays.
Yeah, it's like $11 on Amazon. So
what?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm all in on that. Incredible fucking movie. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big shout out to Kim Hwan-hee, who plays the daughter.
Yes.
Move over, Linda Blair. We have a new actress in town who can really fucking crush traits of being possessed. I mean, this is one of the best child performances I've seen in a good while. But also, like this stands up there with The Exorcist, which is, again, it's one of those movies I was talking about. Like, very obvious, I think, inspiration in terms of that. I think The Exorcist, to me, I kind of see as the godfather of all exorcism type things. Like, that is one of the most quintessential horror films, I think, out there.
Yeah, that one's pretty iconic.
It's one that I really enjoy. And I think that the actress here, Kim Hwan-hee, she
kills it.
Absolutely insane in this role. Like, she, man, like, I feel like it'd be hard to watch this movie in some ways because you go back to like that first maybe 30 minutes, hour, and she's just like this really, really innocent, nice girl, and then, man, she's all sorts of fucked up throughout the rest of the movie, and it's pretty harrowing. Let's put it that way.
Well, what was your favorite moment in this movie?
Oh yeah, we didn't do that. Favorite moment. Like, I feel like it's probably something where the daughter's possessed, because I think that's kind of one of the best things, but I couldn't really call like a specific moment, like where, like, there's like I think all the scenes involving the daughter being possessed are really, really great. I think the one thing that I picked kind of in preparation for this was the moment when they first go to the stranger's house, and like, I think it's the two cops, it's the main guy and then his cop partner or whatever, and like they're just, and I guess the deacon,
yeah,
the one guy's nephew,
like, why the fuck?
something.
Why the fuck you, like, that's illegal. You shouldn't be probing around this guy's house.
For me, that was just kind of like the general encapsulation of the what the fuck is happening in this movie, and it's really kind of a moment to me that kind of.
It's interesting because I think that the deacon kind of represents like that. It's the part that the main character's putting away because he's losing it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
He, especially when he starts to dig into that guy's house. He's over there breaking locks and shit. He doesn't give a fuck at this point, And it's so fucking. I kind of just want to go watch it right now. Why don't I just watch it right now?
We got another movie to talk about very shortly, but I'll let you go. I'll let you go soon. No, I think, just to finish my thought, I think that moment just kind of exemplifies like a lot of turning points in the movie of it's the police guy kind of starting to really lose his shit, and it's the moment where you kind of see the shades of the supernatural overriding that maybe naturalistic interpretation of the events of the movie, and just like the actual imagery, like in the house, basically it's got the ritualistic type setup in the back, and then there's that whole room with all the photographs, just like the detail and all that. Like I was just watching that, I'm like, holy fuck, like can you imagine like putting that set together? Like I was just really blown away by the detail that went into it, and just like, and for and watching it, it was just kind of the intrigue of the moment of just like, that's just another thing you're just just gets you thinking like, what is going on here?
Yeah, so, no, it added the element of the story for sure.
I think there's tons of moments in this that if I watched it again, I could probably point to as like, oh, that's my favorite moment. That's my favorite moment. Like I think it's definitely something that could change with time, but that was on a first viewing when I'm like sucked into the mystery of it. That was the thing that really struck me overall, and that's why I picked it. Did you have a moment picked out?
I really like when the demon reveals himself to the deacon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end.
And it's a really simple moment. It's not a very deep moment. Like I appreciate your moment a whole lot. I also appreciate the full-on exorcism with the
shaman.
The shaman. I really enjoyed the shaman character. I thought he was really fucking cool. But that moment where he's like, do you see, and he exposes his true form, and then he takes a picture of that deacon. I really like that spot, it's a real simple line. And you slowly, because he looks like a normal man, but as the dialogue continues in that one scene in that cave, he slowly starts to morph into the demon. It starts with like his fingers and his toes. He starts to get nails and shit, Yeah,
I know when I was watching it, I kind of was like, what
the fuck's going on?
Something's changing. Yeah, I didn't quite get it. And then, I was like, okay, no, there's a definite physical transformation happening.
Yeah. Yeah, what's he say? He says, hold on a second here. The story begins with a biblical quote from the line of Luke in which Jesus exhorts his followers, see my hands and my feet, that is, I myself touch me and see. Never mind. I'm sorry. I just started to read something. I got distracted. Anyways, but yeah, that's the moment in the cave is probably one of my favorite, and it's a real unsettling scene too, because it's I don't know, he's a real demonic looking motherfucker, and he's got that camera and he takes a picture, and I don't know, it's fucking cool. I really liked it. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite moments. Like you said, the movie is chock full of really good shit. So it's hard to pick one thing or the other, but that's probably mine. Yeah. I would highly recommend, if you have the capacity to watch a subtitled movie. I know a lot of people just can't do it, but if you have the capacity to do it, you should watch this. I think it's really fucking good.
And it is long. It's close to 3 hours long, so that's another strike against it for people that are averse to that sort of thing. But
I have a feeling
if you got to break it up into multiple viewings like that, I think that's doable.
I watched it in 2 viewings.
Treat it like a TV show, man.
I actually stopped watching my first viewing. Like I paused it and returned to it the following day when he meets with the angel outside of his home. Or the lady. I don't want to say it's an angel because I don't know if she's an angel or not. But,
right? Yeah, I don't know the full.
Yeah,
story
but that's where I came back to it, and I think that's like 30 minutes out from the end. So I mean, I watched most of it, but incredible movie. I'm really happy I watched that one.
Yes, indeed.
I think we both really enjoyed that one. I think that's probably
definitely ended up being a very strong pick. I would say that's true.
Let's talk about this next one, man.
Let's. It is the last of the 4 that we picked for this bonus episode.
This one's American.
This one is American. It is. Yeah, we talk about American movies all the time, so we know we had to have at least one representative from America, and then the representative that we chose was a movie called It Comes at Night. Came out last year, June 9th, 2017. It's written and directed by Trey Edward Schultz, stars Joel Edgerton, Christopher Abbott, Carmen Ejogo, Kelvin Harrison Jr., and Riley Keough. Here, a family's protection from a highly contagious outbreak across the world is threatened by the arrival of a stranger to their secluded home. So, well, again, non-spoilers here. Did you know anything about this movie before you watched it?
Nope.
Okay. I knew a little bit about this movie. I think I saw the trailer a while back, presumably before the movie came out in 2017, but I had forgotten, I think, kind of the most of the trailer. But the one thing that I remembered from it was a particular image of it almost looked like a vampire, like a zombified kind of guy with like tar or blood kind of like pouring out of his orifices.
Yeah, his orifices. Yeah, his eyes were black. He looked all fucked up old man.
Real fucked up looking old man. That's the one thing that I think I thought about when I watched this movie, and so that kind of colored my expectations of what this movie was going to be. And I think it's fair to say, in the non-spoiler section here, this movie is not at all...
It's not that.
And I actually did go back and watch the trailer. Holy shit, what a fucking super misleading trailer that is.
Yeah, I think that's a common trope with... I feel like we talked about this on one other movie where the marketing team just really fucking misled it. I can't remember what it was. It probably happens more time than we actually talk about it, but... you know what I'm talking about?
Is it it's an episode that we've done previously?
Yeah, I think so. I think we talked about it recently. I can't put my finger on it, but yeah. Maybe it was the El Royale episode. Where you think you're gonna get a lot of what's his face and you don't get what's his face until
that might be it. Yeah. You think you're gonna No, I think that's fair, and the sense that that one I think was still representative of the overall tone and feel of that movie. It was just somewhat misrepresentative of the plot elements and how they came to play.
Where on this one you're getting a completely different movie than a fucked up looking old man.
This movie is, and I you should go back and watch the trailer. Because it's actually kind of funny in some ways, where it's just straight up like marketed more like a typical kind of horror movie. Like I won't get too much into it because I guess that strays somewhat into spoilers. But yeah, I'll simply say that
it's not. I would be pissed if I went to the movie theater to watch a movie that they marketed this way and got what I got. I'd be pretty let down, pretty disappointed.
It's not a straightforward horror movie, and I think that is a fair statement. I think it's probably more akin to maybe a psychological drama, maybe with some tense moments, with some horrific moments splashed in there here and there, but this is not A Quiet Place. And that's probably...
Ooh, maybe that's what... Did we talk about their marketing team? Is that the way that A Quiet Place was marketed?
No, because I think that one was
pretty fair.
Accurate. Yeah. Okay. I mean, they wasn't misleading. It just excised certain elements that threw you off guard.
I understand. Yeah.
I think that this one it's I don't know. I mean, I picked it because I'd heard good things about it. I knew it reviewed well, and I just kind of thought it was a straight up horror movie again, based on kind of my inclinations. And
it's not a bad movie.
It's not to say that I didn't enjoy this movie, but I did want to. The reactions to this movie from an audience perspective have been wildly negative. And I think that's a good part why, is because it's not the movie I think people wanted it to be / expected it to be based on what they were told it was going to be. And I think that's shitty. Because I think it's a movie on its own that's pretty interesting. I think it's pretty well made. I think it's pretty well shot. I think it's pretty well acted. I think there's a lot going for this movie that's pretty good.
I think it's a movie with layers.
But it's not really a horror movie, I wouldn't say. I would struggle to classify it as a horror movie. It's what it says it is on Wikipedia. I don't think that that's entirely accurate, or at least I don't think that that's quite capturing what this movie was trying to do. But I know, I think that, again, I think it's a well-made movie. I think there's a lot to like here if you walk into this movie somewhat knowing what to expect. I don't want to tell people exactly what the movie is because, again, where's the fun in that? But I think you gotta walk into this movie knowing that it's maybe not what the title would maybe suggest it would be, I guess.
I think it's a psychological thing. It's definitely a psychological movie. Psychological thriller, maybe. I think a thriller is probably the best way to put it. There's unsightly imagery, I mean, in that sense, maybe if you want to call, several scenes with a fucked up looking old man a horror movie.
Which it's in the movie, to be fair. It's not like they threw that in the trailer and said that, this isn't part of it, but...
I think the best way to put it is the human element is the most terrifying thing in this whole movie. And it's very much just a human element. You know what I mean? Human nature is the scary thing in this movie, I think. And in that sense, does that classify a movie as a horror movie? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, there are subsections to the horror genre that we've talked about, and maybe this is kind of one of those, and maybe it's just something we don't really see lumped into horror too often. So maybe we're wrong. And it is. It's just not. Again, it's just not something that at least I expected.
I know
it would be,
that.
But...
I think I watched this. This was the third movie out of the 4 that I watched, and I don't know. Coming off of the what was the first one I watched? Coming off of Suspiria. Yeah, The Wailing was the first one I watched. Coming off of Suspiria, I was kind of just like, well, it's a well-made movie. I think it's well-made. You think it's well-made?
I think it's extremely well-made.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of interesting use of the way that it was filmed to convey feelings, to convey kind of the tension in a way that I really haven't seen that used a whole lot. I'll get into that in spoilers because that makes more sense there. But I think again, for what it is, for what it was trying to do, I think it's actually pretty well made. It's pretty tight. It's a short movie. It's only, I think it's just north of 90 minutes. So if you can't deal with sub 3 hour subtitled movies, this is a movie filmed in English that runs just over 90 minutes. Yet at the same time, it's the kind of movie, I think, again, I talked about those negative reactions to it. I think that
it's just not very scary.
It's still the kind of movie that, it's not an in-your-face horror movie by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
It's definitely something that lets you sit with its characters, lets you absorb the atmosphere of it, and lets you kind of, think about the plot elements that come into play, and the uneasiness that arises between the interactions of the characters. Like I think there's a lot to like in this movie. It didn't totally land for me. I'm not, even putting aside the marketing, I think that it's a little rushed, actually, I think in some respects.
I actually watched this with somebody, and I think they may have missed the point. And I don't know if that's just the person I watched it with, or if maybe that's a poorly communicated thing. And that's one thing you got to take into account too. Sometimes things are just poorly communicated, and is that the fault of the movie, or is that the fault of like the density of the person watching it? Does that make sense?
I'm sure there's a bit of both, if you wanted to point to that.
Because I think that this movie I thought that this movie did a very good job of conveying what it wanted to convey. And not to, I'm not trying to be, I don't want to sound like a dick, but I thought it did a very good job of conveying what it wanted. It did a good job of doing what it wanted to do. I thought it was a very good movie. I enjoyed it. I thought we had 4 movies lined up of very horrific movies lined up, but we didn't. This one was not that. But it's funny. It's so short. It's so short that I actually kind of ended up watching it twice. And I thought it was really good. I really liked this movie.
Yeah. I said I like this movie. I didn't love it, and again, that's putting aside all kind of other factors. I just felt on its own merits, it was still a little bit, I think, rushed in its execution of its ideas. And
we'll have to get into it in spoilers.
Yeah.
It's definitely shot really well, and I think the tension is something that this movie seeks out to do, and I think it does it well.
Yeah. And I think that in terms of kind of the feel of this movie, I mean, this is an A24 movie. In terms of other horror movies they've done, they did Hereditary earlier this year. They did The Witch, and I feel like it's a movie kind of somewhat in line with those, where it's not that in your face, like, mass appeal kind of movie. Like, it's just not the kind of movie I think that everyone's going to respond to. And I think that your anecdote is kind of evidence of that. Like, for me, like, if this, opening weekend, this comes out with the marketing as it was, people walk in expecting Halloween, they're going to be sorely disappointed, and I think that's a lot of it. And I think that if you walk in expecting what it's trying to tell you, I think there's a lot to come away with, So I liked this, but it didn't have that impact with me that, say, something that The Wailing did. So,
and at the same time, I think, I don't know. I think that I find that what it's trying to convey less scary and less horrific than the likes of something like The Wailing. You know what I mean? I think something like The Unknown is much more scary than something that knowing, humans are paranoid pieces of shit. I think I already know that, so I don't find it all that terrifying. But I think that's kind of what they were trying to go for,
Yeah, well, let's get into spoilers.
Yeah, we can get into spoilers. Yeah, sure.
Full spoilers for It Comes at Night. I think just to jump off that, I think that the It and the title is not referring to the monsters that were alluded by the trailer, more in the sense that it is the fear, it's the paranoia that comes at night as a result of this fucked up world that we see these families kind of living in. And I think that's maybe that's the point, right?
Sure.
And that's the point, that people aren't going to look at it. People are going to look at this movie and think, well, where are the zombies? Where are the vampires? Where are the fucked up disease creatures? Where are they?
That's just
it. It's more just like, well, there might be some weird shit going on in this movie that we're not aware of,
and as a result, you end up persecuting the wrong fucking people. You end up, you're all fucked up. You're so worried about this other stuff that you turn a blind eye to other things. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's a simple story. It's a very simple story, I think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is simple due to the nature of how it was filmed and what it was trying to tell, and probably pretty small budget in the scheme of things. But there's hints towards, like, okay, maybe there is other things going on, but it's not concerned with that. Like, that's not the point,
right?
The whole sequence of the dog barking its head off and running off into the woods. Well, there's no real resolution to that. There's not technically resolution to, oh fuck, someone opened the door. Who might have been the kid. Might have been something else. It might be some other things going on in here, but again, that's not the point. There's something more. It's not the story the movie itself is trying to tell. It's those are ways to build tension, to build unease and stuff like that. But I think that the oomph behind this movie is that,
and it's a very subtle oomph. Like, yeah. I mean, there's like, for example, the man sitting in the cave that slowly becomes the demon as he's talking to the deacon. That's a oomph, it's like, holy shit. This is I don't know if it's more of a oomph or just kind of delete those other O's and just kind of, just kind of, okay. Well, that's, that happened. And that's the end of the movie. I don't want to talk bad about the movie because it's a well-made movie. You can tell that a lot of care went into the cinematography and the score and the characterization. I thought it was well acted, and I thought that Joel Edgerton was awesome. I feel like you don't see him in a lot of stuff, and maybe we should, because I thought he was great in this movie. But at the same time, it's just kind of a very, and this will sound really bad, but I just think it's kind of a very dull movie.
I don't know if dull is the word I would use. I would just say it's a dour movie.
Dour. That's probably a much better adjective. Yeah, dour.
It's not a movie that's going to make you feel good about yourself, about humanity. It's just kind of a movie that highlights the bad aspects of humanity, and it puts it within these trappings of the worst of humanity is consistently brought out, and I know it just kind of, I don't know if that's necessarily a cautionary tale, but it's definitely tense, and I think the way it's made is
tense and slow is the way this movie is.
And it's not a movie that builds to kind of that hurrah moment like you talked about of, oh shit, this guy's a fucking demon. It's not, oh the shit, there's demons in the forest that they're escaping from. It's everyone's just kind of a piece of shit at its core, and you put people in this environment and that's just what happens. That's humanity in a nutshell. That's kind of the point.
Right. And if you're happy with that, that's what you're getting. So you better be happy with it. But that's what you're getting with this movie, and it's
it's a movie that kind of takes a hard look at humanity and aspects of humanity that I think that certainly a general audience in general doesn't want to think about, doesn't want to dwell on. People watch movies oftentimes to be entertained. This is not an entertaining movie, I would say. I mean, I enjoyed this movie.
But it's not. But it makes you dwell on things that you might want to watch a movie to escape from.
It's not a feel-good movie, and it's not a horror movie that it's not an exciting movie, I wouldn't say.
No.
Like those other movies have kind of exciting horror moments. Suspiria has these grisly murders. People watch horror movies for gore and grisly things like that to happen. That's exciting from a horror perspective. Audition has that torture sequence. People love Saw. People love shit like that. The Wailing has, like these zombie type creatures and violence and gore. Like people love that. This has kind of just character study type thing, more so going on. Like the hints at this other thing that might, dive into those horror aspects that you really like to see. Well, they're kind of just alluded to, but that's not the point. It's not what it's got. It's not what it's going for, And so I think that it can be a frustrating experience.
And those were the words I used.
If that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, those were the exact words I used with the person I was watching it with. It's just not the point. I don't think that's the point. The point is you don't know. And that's what it's a character study of. It's a character study of people not knowing. And what do they do in the result of them not knowing? And I guess it's kind of like a character study on just horror in general. Like the fact that this is classified as a horror movie, maybe it's because it's a study of characters that don't know, and it's fear of the unknown. That's what makes everything so scary, and paranoia and everything else. I think I don't know. It's simple in what it tries to do, and it does it very well, and it's very well made. It's a beautiful shot movie. I think that the sound design in this movie is probably one of the best. It's probably the best sound in all the other movies. I don't know if you can agree or disagree on that, but the sound design was excellent. I don't know if it had the best score, but like I said, the sound design was probably the best.
I think Suspiria wins best score for me.
Yeah. And
I think that this is a movie predicated, I think, a lot on the sound design, I think by design of the contained nature of the movie, and it's got that Mother type thing where a lot of this movie is contained to a single household, and it's not done quite in the way, certainly, that Mother did it, but
same idea, right?
You have to rely on that and accentuate it to make things work, to make things as tense as you want them to be. So you have to execute on that. Whereas I think most of the other movies span a wide amount of locales, and this one does take place outside of the house, but I think a lot of it kind of comes down to that. And just
that's the
that overall focus. Like you have to make that work, otherwise nothing works. Whereas the other ones you can have a scene that maybe doesn't work, but if the rest of the movie's fine, then okay, it's not a big deal. You know, you kind of just, you forget about it after an hour or whatever. So, yeah, I think, you know, in terms of the technicality of this movie, I think what I really enjoyed about this movie was its kind of approach to using, again, I talked about this a little bit, but using the shifting aspect ratios to kind of tell its story. And we've seen shifting aspect ratios. That's not really new to movies.
Right.
But I don't really think you see it used too often in service of storytelling. I think it's more just like, we could use these cameras here that were higher resolution, so we used them here.
Right.
You know, that's, you know, you get the IMAX aspect ratio because, well, we could use the camera here, so here we go. This one, anytime there was a nightmare sequence, it went to a wider aspect ratio. I think the whole thing is filmed in 235:1, and it expands to 271 for the nightmare sequences. You know, the kind of the moments of the old guy with the black eyes and shit pouring out of his mouth, and the sequence where the wife straddles the teenager,
the kid,
and, you know, all the dumps shit out of her mouth on it, whatever's going on there. Like, the aspect ratio literally shifts there, and so that's a clear clue to the audience of this isn't real. Right. The interesting thing is that the whole basically third act of the movie is shot with that aspect ratio, and so I was watching this movie with the intention, you know, like, is this, I'm confused. Like, that was clearly used to frame nightmare sequences, and now it's used to frame basically the entire rest of the movie.
That's just it. You don't know.
And then it gets even wider. I think it's actually 3 to 1, I think, is the ratio that they use by the end of the movie. And I looked it up because I was like, what was the point of, like, I kind of didn't get it. I was just like, what's the point here? And basically the director was kind of saying that the intent was to blur the lines between the nightmare and reality, where
you don't know. It's a descent, dude.
It's just, the reality is now what the nightmare was. It's that things have gotten so fucked that
lost.
There's no delineation between the two anymore. And I was just like,
and it's
fuck,
good.
That's a really clever use of technology to boost your storytelling. And, you know, you don't really see that. I don't think you really see that a whole lot, do you?
No, you don't. I mean, it's just a very intricately told movie experience, or whatever you want to say. And you know, there's a lot of focus on what about this or what about that, but then at the same time you have to pull back and say, what's the point of the movie? What's the point of the story, and what should I walk away from? And I think it does that in a very effective way. You do it with cinematography, you do it with score, you do it with the characters, you do it in all sorts of different ways, and it pulls away from the things that doesn't matter. And it does so very, very, very I don't want to say abruptly, but I mean it's very clear what they're trying to focus on. They're not focusing on the disease. They're not focusing on the fucked up old man. They're focusing on the characters residing in the house and their descent into paranoia. And that's what that's what it is. And they do it through cinematography. They do it through the tension of the score. They do it through the just the characterization, and I think they do it really effectively. And it's a story that, it's a movie anyways, it's a movie that maybe you don't necessarily, it's not the funnest movie in the world to watch, it's not.
No.
But if you want to watch a character piece on some people and watch a very well-made movie, this is it. I think that this is, I think that it's probably safe to say that this is more of an artsy movie than just a mainstream movie. I think that you can really walk away with a lot if you go into it knowing that you're going to watch something that's more of an artistic take on what they're trying to convey. Because, like I said, when you have a director that says, "Listen, we're going to shoot portions of this movie with different characters to try to convey the descent into that paranoia. I think that's that's not something that you're going to see in a blockbuster movie. It's not, you know?
No, not at all. No, I mean, it's, again, spent a lot of time talking about it on spoilers. You have to approach this movie the right way, I think, to be rewarded. And this is the kind of movie I think that I would enjoy, and I did enjoy overall, but I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had... This is weirdly, I talked about, like, sometimes it's nice to walk into a movie blind. This one I wasn't totally blind on, and I think that hurt me in some ways, in the sense that I expected one thing and I got something else, and it was something else that I liked pretty well overall. But there was the part of my brain that was like, well, what about that thing? Where's that thing going to come into play? And I wanted that thing, and then that thing never came. And then, once I can reframe kind of what it is that I'm looking at, I enjoyed it, but this is a movie that kind of, threw me for a loop for a little while of just like, okay, I mean, that was...
What the fuck am I getting here?
Well, I thought it was well made, I thought it was good, but I'm just like, okay, I mean, what exactly was that? And yeah, I think you need to just walk in knowing that. And I think that will change your reaction to the movie. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to like it. Again, I think even as something that I know what it's about, I still like it pretty well. It's still not my favorite of the movies we watched for this episode, but I think it's worth watching. I think it's, again, very well made for what it is, and it's just got that kind of tricky aspect to it where you expect one thing with American quote unquote horror movies, and this doesn't really do that. So
yeah. But let's
talk
about favorite movies, man. What's your order of these 4 movies?
Well, did you have a favorite moment before we get there? Before we come to the night?
Favorite moment in this movie would be, who opened the fucking door?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Who opened the door?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'd agree with that. That's just kind of that's when, like, the intrigue is at its highest level, and then that's kind of the climax, and then shit just gets kind of out of hand from that point on.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'd agree with that. You wanted to talk some rankings for these movies? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. How would you rank these movies?
This is off the cuff. I didn't do a full ranking for this, but let me preface.
Maybe we can just refine it.
Well, I mean,
if you're gonna watch any of these 4 movies, if you would say this, because maybe all 4 of these movies are movies that people missed, but if you only have time to catch one movie on your Halloween night, if you're gonna watch one, which one would you recommend?
I mean, you're gonna need a lot of time on your hands, but The Wailing was easily my favorite of the bunch, and I think that all 4 of these movies were really good, and very different in their own ways, whether or not that's a reflection of kind of the culture that they were made from, but I thought that The Wailing for me was just kind of the combination of all these different aspects of horror put together in just a super satisfying manner, in a way that didn't feel predictable, or when it did feel predictable, it kind of led you down that road, and then it said, nope, it's actually something else going on here, at least for me. It was definitely my favorite of the bunch, and so I would say if you had to pick just one of the 4 that we've talked about, that would be the one. But again, maybe block out 3 hours of your day, which, when you're talking about movies is, that's testy, I suppose. But I don't know, man. That one really just, I would say, really grabbed me.
I would agree with you. The Wailing's my favorite. I would say The Wailing is my favorite movie. And I would say that I would say Suspiria is one that you should watch. Not that The Wailing shouldn't be watched, because The Wailing should certainly be watched. But I feel like Suspiria completely has flown under the radar for like my 27 years of worth of existence. I've never heard of that movie. And to be fair, I've never heard of The Wailing either, but it was 2016. Suspiria's a fucking classic, I think. because you can see inspirations in other movies from it. You know, it's a truly inspiring movie for filmmakers, and it's completely flown under the radar. So yeah, Wailing was by far my favorite. I definitely enjoyed The Wailing. I will definitely watch it again. Audition, it was okay. Obviously, I did not pick up on a large majority of the things they were trying to convey, and It Comes at Night was just okay. It was really well made. It was very good, but it's not something I'm going to write home about out of these 4 movies. The Wailing by far is, I think, my favorite, and I think The Wailing is probably the best. It's just Suspiria is the most surprising, I think.
I think the Wailing is the best. I think Suspiria is probably the most approachable of these movies for probably, if we had to like do a general recommendation. Like I think The Wailing is, again, obviously my favorite. I think it's the most well-made, the most impressive movie of the bunch to me, but I think Suspiria has that straightforward horror aspect to it that's not really super present in the other movies. And I think that from a general perspective, if you're trying to like, Suspiria's sub 2 hours, it's got gore, it's somewhat dated, but I think that, it's limitations of the time, I think I think there's other movies you could watch that were made in 1977 that would not hold up nearly as well as like what Suspiria does. So yeah, I think it's the most approachable in general, but
if you're between the two and you're okay with reading subtitles, watch The Wailing, because that shit's really fucking good.
Yeah, and Suspiria does have the benefit of an awkward English dub, but you're gonna get a dub with subtitles.
You have no choice in the matter.
It's a dub one way or another, so you might as well just watch it in your native language, assuming that is in fact English. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I would stand on it. You really can't go wrong, I would say, with any of these movies, but again, you kind of just gotta. It depends on what you're looking for, and I think that was kind of the nice thing that worked out fortuitously for us in watching these, is that each of these movies, I think, aside from just obviously being made in a different country and having different styles and sensibilities, is that each movie kind of did something different. Talked about different types of stories. And Suspiria, he said, straightforward horror, and Audition's kind of somewhat of a more psychological look at. I guess Audition and It Comes at Night had somewhat similar trappings, I guess, but
very
Audition,
different. What's scary about
very
Audition
different approaches.
Is not scary.
Yeah, Audition, especially when it hits the horror aspect, kind of goes almost into torture porn kind of things that are very prominent, I think, in modern horror. And something like The Wailing is just, it kind of runs the gamut of, here's this thing, here's that thing, here's all these things. Like, there's just a lot going on there, and It Comes at Night, it's probably it's definitely the most, I would say, dramatic in terms of, like, this is a drama of any of these movies, where it's kind of like, is this even a horror movie? There's something here for everyone, I think, and that I was really happy with, again, as how our selection turned out with this episode.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, I think maybe that's a good time to call it for this episode. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
All right, so you've heard our thoughts on these 4 movies from these 4 different countries: Italy, Japan, South Korea, United States of America, U.S. and they, second Borat reference for the episode. Kazakhstan, we got a 5th country in there somehow.
All right.
Thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, spread the word, especially if you are a supporter on Patreon. You are the ones listening to these bonus episodes first. So it's up to you guys to really relay to, just the regular listeners, how it's worth it to get these, the early access to these episodes, and to get the early access to the regular episodes. I mean, and, for those non-Patreon supporters, if you want to hear Watch, Review, Repeat first, that's the way to do it. And it's really at little cost to you, and it helps us.
$2.
It's $2 a month, and it helps us with our costs of the server costs, the website costs. There's just a little bit of costs that we incur, and that basically just offsets that. And that means that we can do what we love to do, basically for free, instead of kind of paying for it, which is great. We're not making money off this. We do it because we love talking about movies. We love talking about TV shows. We have these conversations anyway, and we think that it's really kind of interesting to have other people listen in kind of effectively on our conversations. So, and it also helps us admittedly structure them in a way that's not structure them in a way that's a little bit easier to track. I guess I'll put it that way. But you can find us at watchreviewrepeat.com. That is our website. You can follow us on Twitter at WRRPod. Like us on Facebook, Watch Review Repeat, of course. Send us any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do you have some favorite horror movies? Do you have any thoughts about these movies that we talked about? Or maybe if you listen to this episode and go back and watch one of these movies, maybe send us some thoughts on that. That would be really cool. watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. Get in contact with us that way. Our intro and outro track is Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod. That is licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. And we can say that our next bonus episode, which will be coming to Patreon as a timed exclusive, is going to be on La Trilogía de Guillermo del Toro. It's 3 movies from director Guillermo del Toro: Kronos, The Devil's Backbone, and Pan's Labyrinth. 3 movies I think Andrew and I are really, really looking forward to talking about. So keep an eye out for that. If you are listening to this on the regular feed, sometime down the line, then maybe it's already up on Patreon. I don't know. Look into it. It's a possibility. But until then, enjoy all of our regular episodes that will release until then. Got some good things coming out in November. Maybe even the actual coverage of the new Suspiria. If we get a chance to talk about that, that might be something intriguing. Or, depending on when this was released, maybe we already covered it and we loved it or we hated it or somewhere in between. Who's to say? You might already know, or you need to find out. I don't know. Timeline of this might be very confusing. Anyway, that is it for us here at Watch Review Repeat. Hope you guys had an excellent Halloween or are going to have an excellent Halloween, again, depending on the timing of these things.
Or experiencing one right now.
Or are having a great Thanksgiving. Maybe it's closer to Thanksgiving. I don't know. Or it's Christmas. Or it's a fucking Christmas. Or it's a Happy New Year. Who the fuck cares? Enjoy your day. Laters on the Menjay.
Laters on the Menjay.